gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's August the 19th, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, and Stephen Wagner, as we discuss the news of the day and the news of the weekend. And guys, I want to start today because we do have a story on the website that addresses this. And really, by no surprise, the whole football universe is focused on Miami versus Florida. It's universally acclaimed as one of the top games of the opening weekend of college football. It's a statewide rivalry that doesn't get played very often, which only adds to the magnitude of it. And then you add in the fact that if you're an old school Miami Hurricane fan, this is the rivalry that you care the most about. You know, college football pundits out there might care more about Miami, Florida State, just because the two schools have played every single year, massive games, you know, so forth and so on. But those diehard old school Miami Hurricane fans, they remember the years when Miami and Florida played every single year as well before quite honestly, and I'm sorry if I ruffle any feathers, the Gators became the Chicken Gators and looked for the easy way out to not schedule the game anymore on a regular basis. Not quite sure how this 2-game home and home got on the schedule randomly, but it did. And so now you get Hurricanes Gators this year in Gainesville, and then you'll get Gators Hurricanes at Hard Rock Stadium next fall. So obviously, but that to look forward to as well. But Matt, it's a huge game. You know, people have been asking me. I don't try to sugarcoat it. This game is everything to me for the Miami Hurricanes. But I do understand that when we say that, and I'll debate anybody who wants to say that I'm wrong, but when we do concede that and say that, we are also setting it up for the biggest meltdown in the history of meltdowns if Miami's unable to win that game. And, you know, if they're a good football team, they should be able to pull it out. I don't expect it to be a walk in the park. But let's start there. We addressed the story in today's. We addressed the subject in today's story. Let's start there. Is this game, Matt, being overhyped?
Well, is it a big game? Is it being overhyped? I mean, this is a referendum on Mario Cristobal because it's the first roster that's his. That's why it's a huge game, because Mario has this blueprint that he's only shared with Gary Ferman, apparently, because no one else knows about it. And whatever this blueprint says, like, this year is the blueprint. He's tried to combine recruiting with the transfer portal, and finally he got the transfer portal right, in my opinion, this year after wasting so many spots the last couple of years. He out-talents, I think, every team they're going to play all year, but we've said that probably the majority of the last 20 years. Every year we go into the season, Miami's more talented than 10 out of the 12 teams, 11 out of the 12 teams. I can't think of a year where we haven't said going into the year, you know, Miami should have more than 3 losses. I think the 3 losses on paper normally is what you go in thinking. So if you're going into this year thinking realistically 2 losses would be a good season, if it's just like the past, then they're going to lose 4 games, right? Because they've always lost a couple of games. They shouldn't have every damn year. So to me, it's not about Miami out-talenting Florida, which they do. It's not about, you know, Florida being a middle-of-the-road at best SEC team, which they probably are, and they've been bad for 3 years record-wise. This is about Mario Cristobal, period. You know, you can overhype the game and talk about the matchups. Forget all that, okay? This game, one game, will answer for us if Mario Cristobal is for real or not. Because if he can't win against a Florida team that he out-talents, if he can't rise as a coach above all the coaching blunders he's made in his career, quite honestly, as a head coach, then what are we supposed to believe in? That's why there will be a meltdown if they lose this game, because it's not, okay, in the past, Miami's lost a game, lost its opener, and finished in the top 10. That's happened. It's in the story this morning, right? They've lost the first game and finished with really good records numerous times. They've also lost the first game and been terrible. So, no, there shouldn't be a meltdown over one loss. certainly not over one loss to an SEC team, right? That is decent, right? Average SEC team is a decent team. Like that's the definition of an average SEC team. The reason people will melt down, which maybe Gary isn't grasping, and Steven, I don't even,
I'm the one that brought up the damn
you're a
subject.
guy.
What do you mean I'm not grasping it?
Because I haven't heard you mention once that this is a referendum on Mario. This game is a referendum on Mario. That's why people will melt down, not because of the hype about Cam Ward, not because of anything else. Whatever happens in that game, if they lose, it will be Mario Cristobal's fault. The guy who was brought in as a savior, the guy whose roster is now here, the guy who spent millions and millions of dollars on transfer portal guys, and he will have failed. He will have failed, and you got to live with that for a month before you have another meaningful game against Virginia Tech. And who cares about Virginia Tech, right? They only play 2 games that anyone cares about this year, Florida and Florida State, and at best you're going 1-on-1 if you lose the opener. If they beat Louisville, I don't think Miami fans care. Like, yeah, it's great, but, that's not a game Miami fans are super hyped up about. They're hyped up for Florida and for Florida State. That's not really a rivalry. The Schnellenberger Trophy has not kicked in with Miami fans yet, okay? And, like, the next best team after that, maybe Virginia Tech. Like, and Virginia Tech's not that good. Georgia Tech's not that good. Like, they're okay. They're average ACC teams, but you shouldn't even play close with those teams if Mario Cristobal has followed the Gary Ferman blueprint and built this team the way he should. So, like, that's why people will freak out. Not because it's overhyped, not because, over promises. It's because this is a referendum on what Mario's done for the last 3 years trying to get this program right, and he thinks he's there. And everyone thinks he's there. National guys are saying they're in the playoffs. They can compete to win, to win the ACC. They should win the ACC, some people say. And then all of a sudden, bam, it's back to reality. Mario can't fix what Manny couldn't fix, what Randy couldn't fix, what Al couldn't fix. Go down the line. And it's just like more of the same. So, yeah, this is a must-win game for Mario Cristobal. And on the flip side, it's a must-win game for Florida. They're probably going to lose their head coach. So, right. There's 2 programs that basically the head coaches are in the crossfire. It doesn't happen that often, but this is one of them. And that's what makes this game so exciting, because it's not just about what happens on the field. It has major repercussions for the leadership at both these programs. One single game.
All right, so a referendum on Mario. I get it. He's the head of the program. So ultimately, yes, it's a referendum on Mario. But here's why I didn't isolate it like that. Okay. To me, it's a referendum on the entire program. It's a referendum on everybody in the building. Okay. The strength and conditioning staff, the recruiting staff. It's a referendum on the coaches. It's a referendum on the coordinators. This is an organizational test that we're going to watch on August 31st. And they need to be able to pass it. No argument. Like losing this game will have significant ramifications in the sense that it will be sending a message that you're almost starting all over again because you have built up to this moment. And now you have to prove that you're a ready for primetime player, that you are ready for this game. So that's why I have not tried to minimize it, undervalue it, sugarcoat the situation or anything. I do consider this a very big game. You can call it must win if you want, just for all those reasons, to prove to everyone that everything that you have said about your program and where it is going and how it's on the rise is going to be put to the test on August 31st. And yeah, it sucks that you got to do it on the road at the Swamp, but if you're good enough, you'll win. And I had a very prominent coach tell me that this weekend when we were discussing it, and it made total sense to me. If you want to prove that you are good, you find a way to win this game on August the 31st, because they are not a great team. I think they're better than people think, but they're not a great team. Steven Wagner, notice you haven't been shaving because you've been working so hard. But like you're a newbie to this Miami, Florida situation. You have not, seen a Miami, Florida game before. But I think you recognize how big it is. You'll be joining me on the caravan up the turnpike to go to Gainesville on the 31st, and you want to be there. You want to see it just like everybody else. And you're no stranger to big games. I mean, you grew up in Texas. Texas A&M, massive. Every year. Texas, Oklahoma. always a huge game, even though Oklahoma's in a different state. So you've seen big football games before. What's your perspective on this whole Miami, Florida thing?
Yeah, well, first off, I actually haven't been shaving because I can't afford razors anymore. With inflation and everything, I just can't afford to get them at Publix. But whenever I've talked to a bunch of my friends who live out of state, or people who I grew up with or went to college with or whatever, a bunch of my friends have asked me if I'm going to be at the Miami Florida game. And I said yes because I'm really excited. I'm really excited about it. It's a rivalry that to me I find so unique because it's still a very serious rivalry that both fan bases take very, very seriously, even though they don't play annually and they haven't played annually for a really, really freaking long time. But both of these fan bases feel like they have to win this game. If you're a Florida fan and Billy Napier can't win this game, then Billy Napier in his third year with the program, with the roster that he finally put together after 3 recruiting cycles, he's not capable of winning and he should get the boot. And then with Mario Cristobal, like Matt said, it's a referendum on him. If you can't beat a bad Florida team with this collection of talent, then how are you going to beat a bad Florida team? What would it take to get you to the top then? And whenever I've talked to my friends, in other states about, what they think of this game, for the most part, a lot of them know that Miami and Florida is a rivalry. But every time that I talk to them, it's Miami, Florida State. It's not Miami, Florida. It's Miami, FSU, because that's the rivalry that everyone sees every single year on TV. A bunch of my friends are really curious to see if Miami's going to be good this year. And they said they want to watch that game because they want to figure out if Miami can be good. Does Miami look crisp? Do they look like they're well coordinated? Do they look well coached? Is Mario Cristobal taking a knee in the fourth quarter? Seriously. Is this a program that for the first time in a really, really long time can finally stay out of its own way? I think if the Gators were higher ranked, like they were in 2013, I think they were like a top 10 team whenever they came to whenever they came here when Will Muschamp was the coach and Miami beat them. In Miami beat them down here. They're not going to be. This game is not about the Gators. This game isn't about is Florida ready to compete? Is Florida back? This game is about, is Miami ready to finally step into the national spotlight and prove that they're for real? Because this is the type of game that Miami has found ways to lose for a really long time over the last 20 years. I've talked to a bunch of people about this. I would hate to be the head coach of the team that loses that game. I would really, really hate to be whoever loses that game because you will either be the most hated man in Gainesville or you'll be the most hated man in Coral Gables. And I wouldn't like to be the most hated man in either of those places.
All right, so we take a look at it a little bit today. We show you the history of openers. Yes, Miami has won some and lost some. It's a football game. It happens. If you're playing a quality opponent on opening day, you're taking a risk. And some people in college football do it, some don't. I, for one, love that Miami is playing this game, that it's stepping up and increasing the degree of difficulty again on opening days of seasons. If you're trying to be relevant again in college football, you can't shy away from the big game. Miami isn't, and we'll obviously be bringing you an enormous amount of coverage here in these last couple of weeks before the Canes and Gators square off. And part of that today is we take a look through the eyes of a guy that covers Florida every single day, what the strengths and weaknesses are of this Florida team. So you can check that story out as well. Some other football stuff that's on the website today. Our Inside the Lines features continues with a sit down with Simeon Barrow and Markeith Williams. So if you have not been following our series, all the links are in there. You can go back and watch these interviews. Not all of them are great, but a lot of them are very, very good. So, make sure you make the time for that. We also have a mailbag today. Been taking questions from the fans. No subjects off limits, and that's always a lot of fun and very informative. So, encourage you guys to check that out on the website today as well, along with a story with Mish Powell, the transfer safety from Washington. He talks about how well he sees this Miami secondary coming together in fall practice, and it really has, from everything we've seen and heard. People are very encouraged by what the secondary has been doing out on the practice field. So make sure you check that story out as well. But also today, we have an incredible amount of recruiting coverage for you guys. It was a big weekend this weekend. High school football teams playing their kickoff classics. Stephen, you and Azubi spent the whole darn weekend, literally morning, afternoon, and night, watching high school games. Give us, your opening impressions of opening weekend of high school football.
My biggest takeaway was, and this isn't necessarily directly Miami related, but it will have positive repercussions for Miami. Well, I shouldn't say positive repercussions. That's kind of a that's kind of a paradox. But this is going to have positive effects for Miami down the road. They're definitely going to enjoy this. Teddy Bridgewater is a really freaking good coach. I was kind of curious what Miami Northwestern was going to look like this year after seeing them last year. And I mean, it just being a complete shit show. But they were very well coached. They were incredibly disciplined. Their game plan was creative. It looked like they were, they figured out how to use their talent. You saw a bunch of really big playmakers who Miami is going to go after in these next couple of years, especially in that 26 cycle. You saw them play pretty freaking well. Javari Flowers, the 4-star cornerback, incredibly fast. He runs a 10.5 100-meter dash. And then Calvin Russell, who I think every single site has as at least a top 30 player in the 26 class. I mean, he looks really, really freaking good. And he looks like a player who's going to really take a positive step forward in his development with Teddy Bridgewater, now the head coach over there. But I think we ended up seeing about half a dozen or so players that Miami either has committed or is really, really after this weekend. That hands down, the best player that I saw this weekend was Gerard Pringle. I mean, man, Miami got their dude at running back in the 2025 class. I have absolutely no doubt this is the guy for them. I've kept on hearing comparisons to CJ Verdell. He's going to kind of be their CJ Verdell, because CJ Verdell was a back who they just loved at Oregon. And they think that Pringle is going to be basically the Miami version of CJ Verdell. Really fast, very quick. He's a one-cut back, find a hole, get north and south. He ran for over 150 yards behind an offensive line that I did not think played particularly well. He absolutely torched Miami Norland, which is a local school that historically has had some pretty solid defensive talent. But I mean, man, Pringle is the guy in the class. I even looked it up. He's even got a similar build to CJ Verdell. I didn't realize CJ was so small. The Oregon website, his senior year, had him listed at 5'8" and 211 pounds. Right now, Gerard Pringle's 5'10", 185. I think he's probably actually a little bit closer to 5'9", 185. But I think he is absolutely the guy. Miami, it looks like they're probably done at running back in the cycle. It seems like they are very happy with just taking one running back in this class, given the depth that they already have in the running back room when you look at the guys in front of them. You took Jordan Lyle last class. You took Mark Fletcher the year before that. Chris Johnson, we haven't even really get actual playing time on meaningful snaps on the field, but he's fast as all heck. So I mean, man, you're talking about a running back room that next year would be 4 deep already, and that's just on guys that Cristobal's brought in through traditional recruiting. I mean, man, Gerard Pringle is going to be really, really freaking good. And I think once he gets to Miami and he actually gets to run behind a good offensive line, man, I think that kid is going to be special.
Yeah, running back U is back in the 305 for sure. The running backs have been performing unbelievably in fall camp. Everybody's really fired up about what they're seeing, including from kids like freshman Jordan Lyle, who people think is just going to be a phenomenal player here at Miami. Mark Fletcher is just barely getting ramped up. Don't expect him to do a whole heck of a lot in Gainesville, but there's so much talent. I mean, even like, we hear even Jay Allen is doing incredible in practice. So they may have, when you factor in Chris Johnson and the freshman Elijah Lofton, I mean, I would consider, if I were them, redshirting Mark Fletcher, believe it or not. Let him get 100% healthy and then, come back next season when you don't have Damian Martinez ready to rock and roll. I don't know if that'll end up on the table or not. A lot will depend how the season goes and how healthy they stay at running back, but they have depth and they have quality. And it's going to be very exciting to see Miami this year running the football, believe it or not. With all the hype about Cam Ward, they might be at their best running the football when you factor in the offensive line that's in front of these backs. And so don't get mad. Don't start booing if they run the ball a lot, because it's going to make sense, I think, for them to do so. All right, so let's see. So like I said, a whole lineup of recruiting coverage on the site from the weekend, from today. We had our Live from the Crib features where the guys put together notebooks on everything they saw when they went out to the crib on Fridays and Saturdays. So you could Friday and Saturday you could check that out, as well as a whole bunch of other recruiting stories. The number 7 recruit and number 1 athletes in the 2026 recruiting class, a kid by the name of Brandon Arrington from California. We've got an update on him. You can catch up on what this high-profile 2026 recruit is saying about Miami. And you're going to see us start covering 2026 recruiting a lot, because it's going to be a huge focal point now. The 2025 class, in terms of high school players, is pretty close to being complete. I know I said that on the message boards a couple days too prematurely. And, Mario decided to take a couple more commits that kind of caught us a little bit by surprise, because they supposedly were done taking it. But I feel a little equally comfortable now saying that I think that for the most part, it doesn't mean that if a guy emerges during his senior year this year that they won't pounce, because they will. Remember, rosters are soon going to 105 players, it looks like. So there's all kinds of room. You can just keep signings and signing away. So as guys emerge here in their high school seasons, Miami will add to this situation and it'll change again. But for right now, it looks to us like the majority, I'll say, of the 2025 high school recruitment is complete, with signing day coming in December. So you're going to see us focusing a lot on 2026 here moving forward. But that doesn't mean we're ignoring 2025, because we do have a story on the website today we're calling Stock Up Recruiting Candidates 2025 Miami Commitments Who Could Rise in the Recruiting Rankings this fall. Right now, Miami's hovering, I think, around number 11 or 12 in the team recruiting rankings. So if the guys that are committed can increase their rankings, it would be very significant for the program. We also have a story with 4-star linebacker commit Gavin Nix. He has shut down his recruitment. Doesn't look like anybody's going to have much of a chance to steal him away from the Hurricanes. Canes remain a top choice for rising 2026 wide receiver Tavion Wilson. We got that story on the website, along with a story on commit SJ Alo-Fatuli. He's planning on being ready to contribute once he gets to Coral Gables. We got that update on the website. Miami's working really hard to impress 2026 offensive tackle Joel Irvin. He will attend the Canes opener at Florida, along with a lot of other players. We'll be having that coverage for you over the next couple of weeks, but we've got an update on Joel Irvin on the website today. We got a primer on which local pipeline schools in South Florida have the most Miami targets in the 2025 and 2026 classes. So if you're a casual high school fan, you want to go out to some games this fall and see some of the top Miami targets and commits, we start preparing you for that. Miami got a couple commitments over the weekend. One from 3-star defensive lineman Micah Newton. He flipped from NC State to Miami. We have complete coverage of that, including an analysis, as well as coverage of the commitment of top 150 defensive back Bryce Fitzgerald, who committed to the Canes out of Miami Columbus. He strengthens that local pipeline by joining the Canes. So check out all of that coverage. Let's see. 2026 linebacker Karan Maycock. He talks about his growing relationship with Miami. We got that story, along with a story on 4-star Miami DB commit Amari Wallace, who tells us all about his injury diagnosis. Had a pretty significant injury here in practice, getting ready for the season. Miami is sticking by. It's offered to him. He will be a Miami Hurricane, but we bring you an update there. We also have a story with in-state Georgia commit Tyler Williams, a wide receiver that Miami is not giving up on, even though he's committed to Georgia. The relentless pursuit of Tyler Williams continues. We bring you up to date on that. So all in all, you got a ton of coverage. Sink your teeth into. This morning, we will have continued coverage of fall camp as the day goes on, or as the week goes on. We're not quite sure whether we'll have anything today or not. We got to wait and see, but we will have a lot of stuff for you guys this week. And then, of course, we'll be getting ready to go to Gainesville. It's coming fast, Canes fans. So get fired up, no matter whether you believe it's an end of the world type of situation or not. It's one that's going to get the blood flowing through the veins. Let's put it that way on August the 31st. So we will do our part to make sure you're fully informed. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff, talking to writers that cover the team in Gainesville, just to give you guys insight on what Miami's facing. Just loads and loads and loads of this coverage coming your way here over the next 2 weeks. If you're watching this show on YouTube, you like our channel, like this show, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It helps us grow our audience and helps us with the algorithms at YouTube. And lastly, if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please come on over, join our community of fans. Your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day, and will allow Stephen Wagner to one day be able to walk into a public supermarket and buy himself a razor blade. Okay,
one day. Not today. Not today, though. Not today. One day.
So for Matt Shodell and Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time, everybody.